Okay, let's just keep this introduction short and let's just get into this. So, I'm currently working on a project concerning the Clone Wars multimedia project like from the 2005 to 2008. And while doing so, I was basically, I had to come across and read this eventually, Star Wars Shatterpoint, a Clone Wars novel, or by Matthew Stover, the same author who also worked in the New Jedi Order, and basically specifically wrote the New Jedi Order Traitor book. Also, this includes a short story written by Matthew Stover called Equipment, also a good story. It's included in the audio, in like the description below for you guys, so you guys go check it out yourselves. So basically, what I did while I was looking into this, so why did I get into the EU? I'll just keep this short. I got into the expanded universe and the original lore of Star Wars because I don't like Disney as a company. It's not just that I don't like their interpretation of Star Wars, or I don't like how they treated Lucas or like the fans. I just don't like. Actually, all that goes into them being a horrible company. Yeah, like I refuse to support Disney in any capacity because they are literally just an unethical, immoral company at this point. So I refuse to support them in any way, and I plan to undermine them by basically focusing only on the true lore of Star Wars, the expanded universe, the canon that existed before Disney and Dave Filoni got their hands on it. So basically, what do I like about Shatterpoint? Why was this one of the high points in like the Clone Wars multimedia project? Because there's a lot of good stuff in the multimedia project. And by good, I mean very fantastic. It honestly puts the TCW 08 show to shame. Not that I hate the 08 show, like that got me into Star Wars too, but like after looking into like the multimedia project that came before it, guys, we got whipped off. Like we got sold a lesser product and just got used to that mild taste when we had something this spicy here right for us. So let me explain by talking about the Shatterpoint novel. So basically, in this novel, it's like 6 months into the war, and Mace is still having night terrors or something akin to nightmares. Of course, they're not nightmares to him per se, but I mean, like, if you're one of only 20 survivors out of like the 200 of your order that you sent to go save 2 other prominent Jedi on an alien planet that you really were not prepared for, they kind of had to scramble those 200 Jedi pretty quickly because Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Padme were about to get executed. Like, the Star Wars, the Attack of the Clones book actually does a good job of explaining all the events leading up to Geonosis. And while on Geonosis, he has Dooku at gunpoint, at, blade point. He has his amethyst blade right under Dooku's chin. He could have just done one sweep and taken his head off. Mace, with his special ability known as Shatterpoint, which again, if you don't know what Shatterpoint is, it's legitimately like, he explains it very well. It's like he sees vortexes and he sees the energy web around something. He sees where the weakest part of that web is across space and time, and he can like cut that web. He can see the weakness in anybody and anything, including events. And right there, Shatterpoint for the entire war was Dooku. Mace could have ended the entire war right there with just one flick of his wrist, but he couldn't do it. Because unknown to people that have only engaged with Star Wars on the screen, Mace deeply cares for his fellow Jedi. Like, he cares about Dooku, he cared about Sorfolk, he cared a lot about Depa. He even cared about Anakin and Obi-Wan. Like, Mace sincerely loves every member of the Jedi Order. It's hard for him to think any of them could fall to the dark side, or could go rogue. Not because he doesn't know that can happen, not because he's arrogant or ignorant, but because, honestly, underneath all that badassery that we love Mace for, underneath all that alpha male energy, and yes, he does refer to himself as an alpha male in this book, and I believe it when he says it, there's, underneath all that, the proud warrior, he would probably denounce himself being known as prideful, but he was acting a little proud in the book. But underneath all that pride is just a man that loves too deeply and forgives too easily for his own good. He will overlook the badness in somebody just so he can see the best in them, even if they're actively trying to kill him, like Dooku and, unfortunately, like Sora Bulk and, yes, even Deppa in the book. It's not really a spoiler, by the way, because let's be perfectly honest, do you really expect this book to have a happy ending? Like, here's how the book starts off. The book starts off with him basically saying, "In my dreams, I do everything right." He says that because he thinks he made some mistakes on Geonosis. Namely, he said he should have probably killed Dooku. But at the same time, Jedi are supposed to do everything they can to not take a life. But yet, he could have saved so many people by just, killing Dooku. Even Deppa in the book tells him they should have just dropped the Baradian bomb in Geonosis and just taken out the entire Separatist movement before things blew up. But no, Mace wanted to go down there and be a Jedi and go save Anakin and Obi-Wan and Padme. I mean, but that's what Jedi are supposed to do. They're supposed to save lives, but yet, to save more lives, they should have taken a few there. Basically, consequentialist philosophy right there, which is something the Jedi do not really adhere to. Because as Mindu states, Jedi are not moralist. They're good, not because good is, good, but more so that they are altruistic because it is safe. Because we all know what happens when a Jedi acts out of selfishness, anger, and hate. Nothing good. Just ask Exar Kun, ask Anakin, ask Ula Kaldroma, and also just ask Kyle Katarn when he basically thought he could conquer the dark side and failed. Luckily, he managed to drag himself back with the help of Mara Jade. But what I'm really saying is this. Mace basically ends up taking out Jango Fett because, he can see a Shatterpoint, but he doesn't manage to take out Mace. But he doesn't manage to take out Dooku. So basically, Mace is sitting there and, he just got out of training in the beginning of the book. He says he doesn't have nightmares because in his dreams he does everything right, but every other Jedi that survived does have nightmares because, they literally, out of the 200 that went there, literally 1/10 of them survived out of the 200 that went to go save Anakin and Obi-Wan and Padme. You don't lose that many people and end up becoming one of the only survivors. Even Quinlan Voss said that he could have failed Ayla He failed because Ayla was one of the Jedi sent there. And again, he was very lucky he survived. It was thanks to his training, most likely, that he did survive. But damn, Quinlan had every right to be hard on himself, to be honest. He could have prevented Geonosis if he had basically just gotten into contact with them sooner. Or if he had known about it a bit more. Yeah, a lot of this stuff doesn't... Remember when I said that in the multimedia project, a lot of stuff ends up happening that builds upon the war exponentially better? This is one of them. All the comics, all the books, all the games, in the Tartakovsky TV show, they all match up. And pretty soon I'll have the entire playlist done so I can show it to you guys. But for now, we're just gonna talk about Shatterpoint. So anyway, they sent Deppa to Haroon Call at the start of the war so that she could basically help sow dissent among the Separatists. Because what people gotta realize is that there's only about 1.2 million clone troopers in the Republic as of right now. Soon it's gonna be into the 3 millions, but now it's only this many, and by the end of the war it's gonna be 1 point something billion, 1.3 probably, due to something with the other cloning cylinders. But for now, there's only 1.2 billion. One clone for every single planet in Republic space, as well as 1,000 left over to basically help fight the rest of the war. So they don't have enough clones to basically go on a full-on offensive. So Yoda, who is basically stated to be one of the master strategists of the army, holds them on the keywords to basically keep the Separatists from breaking into the Republic space. So basically, they're like a buffer instead of like a piercing shield. They're like a shield, a buffer, instead of like a piercing spear. They basically hold the line as of now. Now, they still are sent to like attack planets that are held by Separatists and are held by like, the Dooku's other forces, but for now, they're basically just sent to other planets like that. They're mainly focused on defense instead of offense. They only go on the offense when they basically have to because of how few troops they have. Whereas the Separatists, they basically have over quintillions of droids. That's not a made-up number, by the way. It's listed in the official guides. They have over quintillions of droids, and they can just continuously make more because it's funded by some of the richest people in the galaxy. So the droid army is basically limitless. Technically the Republic is also limitless because they can just basically have more clones born. But whereas droids just need to have like a flip-on switch and to be downloaded their instructions, it takes time and lots more money to raise a clone trooper. And although clone troopers are vastly superior to droids, like by 100 to 1 superior to droids, they're still outnumbered by a lot. And those numbers will start to rack up, despite the clones having vastly superior capabilities in combat and vastly better creative thinking. So anyway, as Depa on her wound call has been going through a very traumatic experience thanks to the Summertime War, she sends Mace a very disturbing image, which includes a bunch of war crimes that you're gonna have to read for yourself. But let's just say a woman ends up having a message implanted in her mouth. She wasn't alive to talk about it, by the way. So anyway, after Mace sees this, he starts basically having a bit of a panic attack because, like, he basically weighs Depa. Depa is not just any Padawan that became like a Jedi Knight. She is a Padawan that Mace basically took in when she was about a few years old, brought her into the Order, trained her himself, and she went from a knight to a master to a member of the Jedi Council alongside Mace. And besides Mace, she's one of the youngest Jedi Council members in history, and Mace helped to train her. Mace got into like the council when he was like 25. She got into when she was in her early 20s. Let that sink in. That's how good of a master Mace Windu is. He's trained two of the strongest Jedi Masters during the time of the Clone Wars. There was Ichu Shanjan and Depa. Unfortunately, both of them did not have the happiest of fates at the end. Ichu Shanjan ended up having to almost fall into the dark side because he had to kill Zebon's Tan for basically what he did to his Padawan, Stan Weave. Then we got Weave's sister, who was Ishu Sanjan's new Padawan. She was almost turned to the dark side, and he basically killed Zebon's Tan, who was like the general before General Grievous took her rank because, she was executed. And then after that, he basically disappeared for like several years, and Mace, up until his death at the hands of Anakin and Palpatine, never found out what happened to him. Now, Ishu Shanjan does have a bit of a redemption during like the Rebellion era when he meets Princess Leia, but Depa unfortunately doesn't have much of that. But I'm gonna just say it like this: Depa does not traditionally die at the end of the story. You're gonna have to look into it to see her brutal fate, though. But anyway, Mace goes to her wound call because, one, he wants to make sure Depa's okay, but doesn't say that part out loud. Two, is because he's the only one that could bring Depa in if he doesn't want to come peacefully. Because, as most of you hopefully know, Mace invented this cool new lightsaber style called Vapad. Now, Vapad is a combat style that Mace basically states would make Depa almost unbeatable in personal combat. And if you read this and you see just how Vapad is used in not only lightsaber combat, but also unarmed combat, and basically it makes it look like you have 24 limbs or more just with raw speed and ferocity alone. It's basically almost unpredictable, and it makes sense why he thought he was the only one who could basically bring her back as he chose not to go peacefully. Because he really was one of the only people that could have gotten to Depa at that point in time. He's also one of the only Jedi around that could have basically survived on Haroon Call like he did. Because here's what a lot of people don't know, a lot of casuals most like, Mace is from Haroon Call. His people are the Koronai. Now, he was basically like born on the grasslands. Actually, when you look at the Haroon Call, it reminded me a lot of like descriptions of Africa, and I mean that in the most awesome way possible. The summertime war is like a guerrilla war between like between the Koronai, and they have this name for like the people that are not Koronai, not from the planet. What's it called again? Hold up. Oh crap, I forgot the name. Hold up. It's on the tip of my tongue. Okay, so apparently it was called Balawai. The off-worlders are called Balawai, and the people that were born on Haroon Call are called the Koronai. Now, interesting thing about the Koronai, and why you can honestly see how Mace is so powerful, and especially in the EU where the powers are a lot better described and a lot better presented than anywhere else in Star Wars media, is because the Koronai, as the Jedi archaeologists basically have been studying them, they likely descended from an ancient Jedi ship that crash landed on the planet a long time ago, because every single Koronai is force sensitive. Every single one is force sensitive. Obviously not all to the same extent as Mace's, or even Carvaster, but they are all force sensitive. They just don't have, Jedi training as of now, as of late. But they were trained in some force combat by Carvaster and possibly even by, like, Depa herself. Because Depa's been leading a guerrilla war on Haroon Call for these 6 months. First it was against the Separatists, but then it was just also being a part of the Summertime War, and the fact that, how do I put this? The Koronai have this certain word for the Force that is basically called Pelicotin. They call it like that, and it's called like the jungle voice, or like the spirit of the jungle or something. They basically call it that, Pelicoton, and it basically connects you to the jungle, connects them to the Akdog, connects them to the other creatures and their animals, and they basically use this to help them navigate the jungle. Basically, you wouldn't survive in this jungle if you weren't at least somewhat force sensitive to get your jungle sense going. While in the jungle, while in there, Mace discovers that it is permeating with darkness. Darkness is surrounding everything, even if it's not penetrating it. The guerrillas are all fighting out of hatred and malice, and the dark side is growing ever stronger. Mace almost goes absolutely mad there after just a few days. Think about what this would do to Depa after several months there. Yes, he wasn't gonna be in the best mental shape, because the thing about Jedi is this: if you're force sensitive, whatever you put out into the Force is magnified. If you put out hope, peace, serenity, that's magnified. If you put out hatred, anger, and malice, that's magnified too. And since every chord is basically force sensitive and they're in the middle of a war, and the Force magnifies whatever you put into it, and that the Force, is the ultimate reality of the Star Wars universe, and everything else is just Pelicoton's dream, as like the indigenous people of Haroon Call would say, and as Carvaster says, and even as Mace admits, it's a lie of the Force is more real than any reality we can experience. yeah, you can start to see why the differentiation between the light and the dark side is so necessary to live a balanced life as a Force user. Because whatever you do, even one simple action can send ripples spiraling across all of space, time, and existence as you know it. And that is why it's so important to distinguish between the light and the dark. That is why they cannot be mixed and they need to be differentiated, as Mace makes very clear in the story to several Force-sensitive characters, including to Depa herself even. And also to this character called Nick, and Nick and Mace are gonna have the best relationship if you guys actually, listen to like the audio that where you can get this from in the below. Like, they have such a good relationship. Like, also Mace ends up making him basically a part of the army, but I'm gonna let you guys discover how they worked up to that point, because it is so awesome how they basically developed together, especially considering that Mace almost broke his arm when they first met, and he immediately took control of like the entire situation. So basically, when Mace starts going to her room call, he immediately sees that it's corrupt and that the Separatists are giving the people there, namely the Balawai, weapons to basically help fight the natives of the Koronai of Ukal. So basically, he already walked into Civil War. He basically gets interrogated, and by interrogated, I mean they basically have him basically go capture Depa, which he was going to do anyway. And as he basically goes around Call, Mace is seeing atrocity after atrocity after atrocity. So, I'm not sure. I don't really believe in trigger warnings, but I guess I'll just tell you guys some of the things that do happen in the book to just prepare you. So let's see. You will see lots of death. You will see body parts getting blown off, vaporized with blaster bolts. You will see people losing their sanity. You will see flesh-eating bugs that basically bore into your brain and eat it from the inside out, and then they burst through the skull. Basically, I'm not sure what they call them, but I forgot what they called them, but like yes, those are native to her room called. You will see basically a lot of war crimes. You will see the death of young teenagers. You will see children put in great peril. You will see a Jedi Master going through every possible Jedi teaching he can get from Yoda and from himself in order to just remain sane throughout this entire crazy war. And also, just remember, this is just a small war on one planet. And it's not even the Clone Wars. If that's a small war on just one planet that barely anybody outside of that planet even knew was happening before the Republic and the Separatists started their whole big war, how bad do you think the war is going to get on a galactic scale, which it is on right now with the Clone Wars? Like, this is why I love this novel. You already see how bad war is just on a local level within one planet. How bad do you think it's going to get on a galactic level? And you see how bad it gets on a galactic level. Like, this is a book showcasing to you that war is bad, and that the Jedi don't really fight against the Sith. They don't really fight against war. They fight against the darkness that comes from both of them. The Jedi are the light of hope, and Mace really starts to understand and believe that by the end of this. And Mace, throughout all this, tries to save everybody he can. He's still a Jedi, despite what he said about them being altruistic because it's safe, not because it's like the right thing to do, but more because it's safe and that they're not moralist. He still cares about doing the right thing. He still wants to help people. He wants to save people, but unfortunately, he can't save everybody. Unfortunately, he needs to make sacrifices, even ones that will wound his soul. And unfortunately, he really can't even save the person he went there to save the most. Mace manages to win some, but he loses some too. And it's not always identifiable what he wins or loses. Basically, in war, there are no winners, just survivors. But I think I've talked enough, if you want to learn about, Mace, about his past, about, the pod, about his relationship with Depa and the Jedi Code and the Jedi Order itself, And if you want to learn a lot of important details about how the war is constructed and how it's basically being won out at this time point, like I said, this is 6 months into the war on the timeline, I heavily recommend you just go into like the description to check out this book. I'll have a link for you guys so you can go listen to it or read it. So anyway, thanks for listening, and I hope that this project ends up being as good as the multimedia one itself. Peace out, faithful ballers. And always remember, stay brawling.